Mm. Are you ready?
Yeah. All right, let's go.
Let's go. Yeah, hello, Vikash. I do know that it's early in the morning at your place, a few hours earlier. So thanks for taking the time. But maybe you can introduce yourself and give us a little idea who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It indeed is first thing in the morning right now for me, so it's wonderful, nice and fresh. I'm Vikash, everyone. I'm an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon right now, and previously I was a senior research scientist at Meta Fair Labs, and before that, Google DeepMind. Back then it was called Brain, and at OpenAI as well. Roughly, you should think me of someone who is curious about uh, emergence of intelligence and why it is embodied. Why not there is an intelligence which is like just not embodied, right? So I've been trying to research or find answers for the questions, what are the fundamentals of embodied intelligence and why intelligence is embodied in the first place? And I've been on this field for around, I don't know, 15 odd years and have attacked the questions from different point of views, sometimes from morphological point of view, sometimes from behavioral point of view, and sometimes even from cross-embodied point of view. So yeah, that's who I am. That's my curiosity, where I do and what I do.
Thanks for giving us an overview here, and I'm curious about you. So, people who follow the podcast know it's not a technical podcast, even though we do step on technical things. What I first always like to do is ask you, how was your upbringing? How was the first few stages that maybe put the seed to everything that came afterwards, and maybe you can share as much or as you like, and I'm listening.
Yeah. So upbringing, I grew up in India. It's a mid-sized town, I would say. It's not too small, not too big. Upcoming, a lot of people with ambitions, I would say. I don't think we grew up with a lot. We had just enough to get by just fine. There were challenges, but everyone has a little bit here and there. I would say focus was definitely a lot on education from the get-go, and it primarily stems from my parents. They were like, they will do anything possible to make sure that your education and focus probably is not getting distracted by anything else. We have lots of like sports and stuff as well growing up, so that's where I think like curiosity stems from. But maybe like one unique thing that I remember that like my mom used to call all the time is like, this guy will open up anything right now which is in the house. So that's where like we started. I always used to tinker around with things that like why does it work this way, or like we'll open up. Most of the time I used to like being able to close it up and it works just fine. But if you ask my mom, she'll disagree. But that's a separate story for another day. Um, then a little bit later in the life, I think I got much more curious about like physics, I would say. I wasn't too great at math, but like maybe this is a humble way of saying that like I wasn't an excellent math, but I was just fine. But I was like much more interested in physics. So physics and math became like critical part of my thought process over time. And then later during my undergrad, I did like a formal study in math. It was called math and computing. So it was kind of a blend between pure math and much more computing in terms of like computer science. So that's where like my fundamentals got solidified. But there is a very unique point in my life, which I remember very explicitly, was I was confused about how pure math or all of these rigorous theorem proving finite element FEDs, and then automata theory, those kind of things, how would I use it ever in my life? And I was very confused, as like someone who was just about to learn all of those things. And on the college campus, I had like a senior of mine on the same program, and I asked to him like, hey, like, so what happens in the future, like closer to graduation, maybe 2, 3 years from now, like what kind of jobs you get or what like the real world looks like. And we brainstormed, and he mentioned to me that there is actually a robotics club on campus. And that's where I think maybe you should see if some algorithmic development could lead to like something interesting over there. And that was my first maybe like formal introduction to robotics, right? And that basically changed the course of how I used to think about like math, which was much more like on theoretical aspect of things, to much more towards embodied aspect of things. That like, okay, these principles can be grounded into embodied element, being, or whatever you want to call it. It was still like a very small, like a car-looking robot to begin with, but journey from there to like full-blown humanoids have been, I don't know, maybe 15, 17 years in making.
Two things. I mean, first, I really like the idea of asking the reason behind, because I think this will help a lot of people to actually being more interested in the topics themselves, right? So if the if the school structure or university structure is focusing on what you could actually do with that, and that, I mean, in math, especially in higher math, there's yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it exists only on in theory, right? And but I think even earlier on, it does make sense to really I'm trying to teach you this because you can do this and that, right? And this bridge, I think, is helping you in the learning process and the remembering process, but also it can be a very good incentive in understanding, because you actually understand that there will be a point in time where this is actually useful. The other thing is, and here this is maybe just my curiosity, going back just two steps and asking, because you said that your parents always ensure that that you get a good education, and how do you ensure? How do you is that just by pure offering and offering and offering, or is that by yeah? Maybe before I got too many assumptions, maybe you can say a bit about this.
I think in the upbringing, the parents basically inculcate where the value in life is, right? And they emphasized quite a bit into value in life is in having a good education, right? So if you ask like what are the primary things they always focused on, I would say education and health were like kind of like the focal point. And that's how we knew that like this is what is important. So my mom, for example, she in during the early school ages and stuff, she will always be on top of what we are studying, what the homeworks are, and she would be like tutoring us in a lot of the early phases. She has a science background as well. So, and then like later on the line, when we had the basics of like, what you're supposed to do, then maybe middle school, high school, etc. She stepped back, but it was more about like just like, oh, you're on track and that's good. But like early school era up until mid school era, I would say she would be the one like checking homeworks, making sure like, things are great, and similar things. So I would say that's how we started. We also had like some kind of a time block, a very loose time block in our daily schedule that like if you come from the school, after the school, like you need to do a little bit of a study, like an hour, 2 hours before you like evening starts, and then it's like 2, 3 hours of like playtime. You go out to the playgrounds, do whatever sports you want to do. And then when you come back, then there is like 2, 3 hours again of like making sure you do your homework time. So there was like a loose structure in life early on up until like maybe middle school. And then after that, when she knew that like we had our right in importance in the right things, then she stepped back and let us do whatever we wanted to do.
Sounds yeah, as you said, when it's loose, there is more the sense of being natural. Like, I mean, it's not natural to like you sit down and you learn 1 or 2 hours. So this is not natural, that's something that comes natural to a child, right? But as you said, over time, it does become natural to you, for you, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I like the idea.
Yeah, it became a rhythm. At some point,
Mm.
like if you're in the groove, then you just like ought to follow those things, right?
Mhm. Okay, thanks for making a quick turning back here. But bringing you back to middle school or later on, you said that physics was something that you were more interested in, and even though I guess you were pretty good at math, not as good as in physics, but was that something that also defined the steps afterwards, especially going into university? That something that you were very good on, and maybe even more curious to what's behind that, right? And or what's next in those topics. Was it easy for you to make a decision what to study and what to do, or is that something that you struggled with?
I think I don't remember struggling too much on that. There were a couple of points that was like maybe everyone tells us things that worked and was amazing. I'll tell you a couple of things that like, it always is a search and then you convert somewhere, right? So in our education system, in the 10th grade, you have to pick like a specialization. And sometimes big specialization choices are you go in the biology stream or you go in the math stream or you go in like commerce stream, like these kind of categorization, very wide. And most of the time, people like of like maybe interest level similar to us, they will choose maybe like the technologically minded people will go towards the math stream. So my dad has a math stream background. My mom has a biology stream background. And then when it was the right time for me to choose, then my dad asked like, "Oh, you're gonna take math?" Or my mom asked like, "You're gonna take a bio stream?" And there was a very small group of people that used to choose math and bio both. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm gonna choose both. And I chose both. I was fine in both of them. I indeed got better marks in like my biology courses than my math courses, but still my interest was more towards math and physics. So this was kind of like a conundrum for my mom is like, you seem to be better in biology side of things, but then why do you keep doing math side of things? But in the hindsight today, I don't think I was ever interested in biology side of things. If I have to go back, I'll probably say that like let's not take the biology part of things. So that's one. In terms of like following it up over time, I don't think I had big issues with it. The issues were closely related to that I want to go back to the reason we study all of those things. And when that was missing, I mentioned the story. That's what was the correction point for me. And more so, math, I was more interested in the physics because it explained the way things move. It explained the way the like the evolution of different dynamical process happened and why it happened, and that kind of got deeper and deeper over time. Maybe coming a little bit more closer to PhD era, doing a PhD was not as clear to me that I didn't know I wanted to do a PhD. And there is a very interesting set of events that happened over there. I'm not going to go too much into detail, but the choices that were given to me is just like, so the people knew me ahead of time in the place that I wanted to do a PhD. So like in the University of Washington, I've been there before for a couple of projects. And then they really were like, okay, I know how your brain works and you'll be really good for a PhD. I think you should do a PhD. And I was like, never in my life ever have I thought about doing a PhD. And all of a sudden, I'm gonna change my entire life philosophy and enter a PhD program. That was like a very hard couple of weeks for me to kind of like change my construct of life. But at the end, what was the convincing argument to me was that like, look, you give it a try. If it doesn't work, you can anyways like get out of a master's, right? So it's not that you are going to change everything. You're just giving something a try for like a year and a half. And if you don't like it, then you can always go back.
And who
And
said
I was
that?
like, sorry.
And who
It's
said that?
one of I can't name it, but like it's one of the program managers or like, you can think of like the PhD advisors to the committee to like, student advisors. So there is a big cohort that I'm working with, but that's kind of like what they tried to say to me. And that kind of made sense that like, okay, it seems like a worthy of an investment and, giving something a good shot where it does look like it can open new horizons for me and help me think deeper into the way we think. Then I said like, okay, let's give it a try. And I tried it, and that's the reason I have like two masters. I've done like a math master's and a computer science master's as well. But then I stuck around and I said like, okay, I love it. And I think that was an unintentional pivot point or like, Opportunity that came in front of me, I took it, and I think that has been the best decision.
When you said that you never ever would have thought that you were going to do a PhD and that it was a totally change of the way you thought about things, why do you say that?
So the engineering training that I have, which is around maths and computer science, if you look at the trajectory of every successful person on that cohort, batch, or like department, everyone is on a financial track. So they are like some big wigs in the financial markets right now. So you become like an investment banker as a future of what training I was doing. Right. So going against the grain when everyone is like interviewing for financial markets and then trying to become a banker and things like that. And people in hedge fund industry will love people with math background because they're trying to build all these rigorous training algorithms, trading algorithms, things like that. So there was no example in front of me which was like doing this is a good idea. And that's why I've never thought about like, okay, PhD is somewhere I need to go. So in our cohort, I believe there were, I think like 50 or 52 students in my batch. And each one of them, like I would say very confidently, over 95% of the people are investment bankers today. Okay. I think I'm the only one that went on for a PhD. Later, I learned maybe like one more person also did a PhD, but it was PhD a much more in a formal scientific realm of like, statistics, which was a natural evolution if you're studying math, I would say. Right. So I was very much the odd one out in making this choice. And that's why it was basically a little bit of a hard of a choice. So then like it wasn't too bad like once you start because then you find yourself back into your group that was computer science because I went into a computer science PhD, and then I started seeing more of the people who were the computer science colleagues that we have doing the thing. So that was the transition. But the reason it felt odd was that I was definitely going against the grain of like what advice I was getting.
And do you think that this advisor telling you this, like you can just try it out for 1 year, 1.5, and then do something else? Do you think that is something that encouraged you to try it out, as you said earlier? Because this is, in my opinion, just one part of it. The other part is still you do need to have the guts to do it. So, I mean, the risk or the threshold gets pushed down a bit, and as you add more context in terms of it's 1 year, so or 1.5 years, so that can make things easier. But the 51 or 52 to 1 example, I think that must have been really hard. And here I'm always trying to understand how do you overcome this kind of situations? How did you make this kind of decisions?
Yeah. So it definitely was hard, but hard not like in this term of hardship of any kind. It was hard to make that choice because it just felt counterintuitive in a lot of ways. Uh, I think like a lot of people will find themselves in different forms of like such hard choices they need to make. I will give you my mechanism that maybe works for me. I don't know, just useful for others to know. Um, I tend to calm down a lot when I'm presented with hard choices. And you can think of as like slowing down the whole process so that you have a bit more time to grasp the nuances of what you are going through. I think like I've seen people when there is like tough choices or there are difficult situations, they feel agitated or they get like uncomfortable, and that's their mechanism of how the body responds or the mind responds. The way my mind and my body response is like to shut down everything, slow down everything, and then, think this through. I know that word probably is said a lot, but just like first step for me is just like shut down everything so that nothing happens. Okay. And then slowly that means you have more time to understand things, more time to just like let it simmer a bit. And then some clarity starts emerging. And then you kind of like follow that clarity for a little bit longer up until you have a decision. So this process for me at that moment was first, oh wow, this is a really big opportunity. Should I do it or not? Then you slow down everything for a day or 2 days. I'm just like calm, composed, really throwing out all of the other thoughts I had in my mind, really kind of like preparing myself to reasonably consider this opportunity, then discuss with a couple of people who have done things before, and then kind of like slowly over time, it didn't feel like that the worst case scenario was that worst case scenario at all. So then that means that I'm picking between an okay choice or a really amazing choice that already makes you like feel very good about things, right? And I have been in the departments before. I was familiar with the University of Washington because I visited that for a few times. So those things kind of helped. I knew what I was stepping into. So it wasn't an unknown, it was a known unknown for me. And that kind of like maybe helped a lot with the process.
Um, I mean, we had a short chat before we started to recording, and I said to you that you have an aura of being very calm, which is totally different from the way I function and the way I work. And you giving this speech now and giving us those insights just tells me that my instinct was very correct. I'm pretty good at these things, and this is one of the reasons why I have this podcast, because I do think there's a lot of value in this. Hearing this so well articulated and thought through, that I do think, and I hope there's a few people out there listening, trying to take something from that. So, yeah, thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it. And you are right. It's a decision. Should I become an investment banker and make a lot of money, or should I become a very intelligent person doing a PhD in a very good university? There's not. It's not you're homeless or you're rich, right? So as you said, putting this into perspective does help. Um, Going back to this, to those moments. Being in the PhD brings you together with a lot of people working on interesting things, and you get to learn other aspects and other yeah, point of views of the same topic, right? Uh, Maybe you can now bring us to the part where university meets industry, where university meets applied science, and yeah, take us here with you.
Yeah. So one of the things which I often quote and mention to a lot of people is there are a few things that are hard to optimize against. One of them is people, and the second of them is time. Both of them are very valuable, and no matter how much you try, this is outside your control. It's outside of control who you meet and what is the cohort you'll be part of, and at what point you meet that cohort. Is that the right time in life or not? And I think both of these are very important. And I've been very fortunate enough to be at a lot of great places. And I would really just thank the point in time where these people chose to be at that place so that I can meet them. Right? That was beautiful. And I learned a lot from like even during PhD and post PhD. So maybe like now getting back to your question, for me, it was tough to sort of choose between industry versus stay in academia. A lot of advisors of mine mentioned that like you would be amazing in academia, but like the applied sides of things, the side of things which is, hey, I really need to understand, and the curiosity of things, of like not leaving it at small bits and pieces of understanding, but like really going it to the depth of understanding. That's where maybe like I was always conflicted of what is the right choice for me. And I was graduating at the time of like the machine learning era really becoming from like a lab based experiment to, hey, this is a thesis around the next step in our generation. And that was an era that I actually did my PhD in, lived through it. So now the question, hey, do I want to be in a teaching line and then kind of inculcate the next generation for how this process works versus really push the frontier even further than we have pushed so far? I think it was a hard choice. I wanted to push the frontier forward. The advice I was getting was that like maybe an academia could be a good choice. And at that point, I was presented with a very interesting opportunity. In my fourth year, OpenAI was being founded, and I was contacted around that time to join. But it was very early, and I have committed to my PhD, and I'm one of the person who has committed no matter what. I'm gonna go through it. So I was just like, no, I committed. I couldn't go through. I couldn't drop out. I couldn't do anything. I am just 1 year away. I'll finish up, and then like I'll consider. But anyways, the moment I finished up, I was contacted back again. I got a call from Elon, and they were like we should join forces, we should work, and that's the opportunity that was presented. And I definitely saw that as a really big opportunity towards what was possible. At the time, I don't think a lot of people believed that it will work at all for, I would say, non-toy problems, especially in the embodied AI space. Because if you see like where machine learning started to work was when it was either categorical variables that you just have to make choices between a lot of categories, or very forgiving problems that it doesn't really matter if you got the mask of like a cat or a dog or the bounding box a little bit off here or there. But the sensitivity of like decision making in embodied AI is much higher. A small delta in torque, a small change in positions will mean catastrophic failures. And I don't think there was a high enough conviction that like it will work for precise problems. So making that uh, sort of optimistic take at the moment was quite counterintuitive to a lot of people back then. But there was a small cohort that did believe in this. And that's where the thesis started like, okay, maybe the way intelligence will emerge will be a bit more embodied. And there was a team, which was the robotics team at OpenAI at that time, which were pursuing this conjecture. And it eventually led to the effort of like, Rubik's Cube manipulation using a shadow hand, right? So that's what the entire process looked like. But that was an amazing opportunity, and I was just like, okay, I definitely need to give this a try. And then I chose at that point the route of industry because it was about pushing the frontiers much more forward for me. Industry can mean different things for different people, and it has always meant a little bit different for me than maybe for like a general audience. It was never like a safe job. It was never, hey, this is guaranteed money, or like this is a cushion or a way to like, have a long form strategy towards life. It was always way more experimental for me. That it is much more about opportunity, and this is a great opportunity right now to have. And that's what I took. Later, I think like the same thing goes on and on for even for Google Brain back in the day, as well as Meta. I think the opportunities that were presented to me was way bigger than what I was myself worthy of or capable of. And I was thankful enough for the people that were there and they trusted me on those things.
I think just yesterday I read the number. I don't know how accurate the number is, but it was how many people using ChatGPT per day, and I think it was like 700 million people. The number that I saw yesterday or the day before, and so we are talking here about like everyone knows this, right? My sister is telling me what she is it using for. My wife is using it for the garden to identify plants and whatsoever, right? You can. So the hype is there. It's mainstream, right? And I just trying to imagine how it must be like turning the time back when no one ever heard of that company. I mean, in the industry, yes, but not mainstream, right? And I mean, I guess these kind of times are going by very fast, and there's a lot of work and a lot of hours. So with a friend, I'm discussing this kind of concept of the good old days, right? You're always realizing them when they are gone already,
Yeah.
and so we're now trying to tell ourselves these are the good times. These are the good times to be more in the moment and more realizing that it's great what we experiencing this at the very at every single day, right? And so this was a lot more of my thoughts. What I'm trying to ask here is, can you look back and trying to understand and grasp how crazy this is? Like, as you said, being contacted as one of the very first people to a company, and it doesn't matter if succeeding or not succeeding, or where in the race is and how good a model is or not. So, but as you said, just being contacted by Elon, I think for the majority of people, this is it's crazy. It's just crazy. Can you somehow put this in context? Can you somehow are you able to realize this?
Yeah, these things are hard to come by, people and time. Again, I don't think I could have done anything to either increase my probability of being at that place or decrease it, right? A lot of time people do try to optimize for, hey, I want to be at X place, and then here are the things I need to do. I don't think it has worked for me. Or like maybe I've never thought of life as that process. For me, it is always much more internally driven that here is I want to do next, here is my interests are, and here is what I see myself spending the next, I don't know, 5 years of my life. And then opportunities are within that funnel. I don't think I would say that I have ever taken a crazy. If someone like, I don't know, says like, "Hey, okay, come and lead the biggest quantum project that we have ever seen in humanity," amazing opportunity, but I'll probably say no because it doesn't have a good correlation with where my excitement is and where my brain finds its own return on investment, right? So in that sense, it was definitely well within what I was looking for in the next future steps. And I'm just thankful at this point of the number of people that came together at that time on that particular initiative. But it's also to say that timing wasn't correct at that time, right? Although we did achieve something remarkable, but that didn't lead to the robotics era as we know right now. It was way ahead of the time. It was at least 5 years ahead of the time. If those set of people were together today, like if that set of people were coming in today, I think it will mean a whole different thing today. Right. So I would say that like I don't think we missed out on anything, but just to say the timing, the people, we got a lot of things together, and these people were ahead of the times than behind the times, the way you said it. It's like often it looks like the future looks a lot ambiguous when you're at the moment. You don't know if you're going to succeed or not, but that's how you follow your conviction, and sometimes you succeed. Most of the time you fail, right? In the average case situation, you will be a mediocre person in this world. So if you follow the general guidelines from everyone, you're bound to end up in a mediocre life. Now the question is you have to be not an average person, and there are two sides of not being average. Sometimes you take too big of a risk and it works out, and then you are not an average and you definitely have some uniqueness about you. Sometimes you just take a risk and it just never pays out, and then you are totally on the other side, right? So it's a bimodal distribution at this point for people who just doesn't want to follow the general guidelines.
Um, I think it is interesting that you said you could not increase or decrease your chances, right? And I think that correlates to the fact that time and people came together at the right, yeah, the right people came together at the right time. Because normally I do think that you can increase, right? You can increase probabilities. You can actually not looking out for opportunities, but you can create opportunities, right? And I think in your case, it's working on things. There are not too many people in the world that are working on those things. There are not too many companies working on those things, right? So I think here the probability you are in the higher ranks because of giving context, right?
Yeah.
But here I don't want
Maybe
to get.
let me just maybe comment on that like a little bit. So the context is important. Which variable we are talking about is important over here. You are creating opportunity for yourself by following your drive, right? So you're improving the possibility of your own success. But since you are on some trajectory, the fact that the other event will happen or not happen, that probability you cannot change, right? So that's what I'm saying. Optimizing for something outside your area of influence, I think a lot of people sometimes try to do that too much.
Hmm.
I don't believe in that much. Like you should know what your area of influence is, and you should like have high conviction in the area of influence that you have.
I'm always using quotes or trying to use quotes from the podcast as podcast titles. So, um, trying to understand your area of how did you say it? I mean, I will look it up anyways. But
Yeah, it's just a colloquial word. Area of influence.
yes, um, thanks for clarifying your thoughts here. um, are always trying to walk through your life or my guest's life, but I also would like to give you the opportunity and here maybe you can help me with my curiosity. What you're doing today, all this led to something, and yeah, maybe you would like to spend a few moments on what you do today.
Yeah. So, like in the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned, right? Like my mind works trying to look for fundamentals of embodied intelligence. And I am on another journey on this stage right now. So it all begins like maybe let's just go early days of OpenAI. Nothing was clear of how intelligence, if any, if we want to call this an intelligence, will emerge. We tried a lot of things. There was something called OpenAI Universe. There was DOTA. There was robotics program. And then the first sprout that really blew up and gave us a signal or like an instantiation of what it looks like was linguistic, right? So what became linguistic intelligence has been the driving force going forward. What enabled it? There were multiple ingredients, transformers, data, compute, etc. I'm not going to go into that, but the form it took was linguistic. And it is going quite, it is very counterintuitive how evolution took place, right? Linguistic was one of the later forms of life that came, like later features of life that came. It started with much more on the locomotion, manipulation, embodied reasoning, and then later it became vocal and verbal. But somehow we have reversed the whole process when it came to like artificial intelligence. So this is very interesting and exciting. It's like, why is the case? Why is there is a rock out there which is not smarter than humans that can just speak, right? This is crazy. This blows my mind. So what I am on a trajectory towards right now, and I feel very bullish towards, is to get to a human level intelligence. I'm not going to call it artificial general intelligence. I'm not going to call it anything super intelligence. I think that people are trying to say, but something that makes this whole endeavor very concrete for me is like human level is very easy to understand and interpret. And in a lot of ways, I would say everyone is trying to get to a human level intelligence in this in a limited subspace. So for voice agents, they're trying to get to human level conversations. For text agents, they're trying to get to human level reasoning. For our visual agents, they're trying to get to human level photorealism. So we were saying like if everyone is trying to find a dimension or subspace to climb towards, what is the really the full space that they're trying to climb towards? And my answer to that is like everyone is trying to go towards a digital being, which is human and has each one of these properties unified. So what I have high conviction towards is right now the issue with AI is it is highly impersonal. And the reason for that is we are in one of these subspaces and it is kind of restrained in a chat box. And it doesn't really know what it means to be human. It doesn't really know what kind of constraints I live with. It doesn't really know what agency I have in the world. So if you break this chat box, where else this AI model will bleed into? And my conjecture right now is it will become a human digital twin. If you have a human digital twin that walks like you, talks like you, has your behavioral preferences, understands you, then this impersonal era of AI, which is limited by what can happen in a chat box, will all of a sudden look like much more ubiquitous of a system. It becomes sort of natural to you that every person has someone which is sort of like in a lot of way mirroring your thoughts, your information, your data, and it is more seamlessly integrated with you rather than a forceful chat box that I have to really go to all the time, right? And the reason it connects with my quest for embodied intelligence comes from the fact that this physical canvas, if I can say, is the source of everything that we do. So instead of looking for the derivative products, which is maybe my voice or maybe like in my visual, you're actually going through the source of all of these derivatives, which is the human form, right? And there is something fascinating and beautiful about this. So we want to evolve AI as a human digital twin. And the reason this is very interesting for me is in the past phase of my life and all our collaborators, we figured out how to do reasoning in a much simplified form factors, which is like maybe 20 to 30 dimensional humanoids. Humans are two orders of magnitude more complex. It's 1200 dimensional system. And if we can actually do embodied reasoning, multimodal reasoning on a human form factor, that means we have solved a problem for which humanoid is a subspace of. It's a simplified solution to the human level humanoid that people want to build in the future. Right. So instead of like you mentioned, right, it always looks like, oh, that phase just passed. That was beautiful. I think we or like me and like a lot of people behind us in the team are always like, this is the new thing. This is the new beacon. This is the new future we want to enable. And maybe it's very risky, but that's what we want to do. We want to do that something no one has done before. Or if we fail, we definitely accelerated the timeline towards that.
I have an analogy that might be totally off, but please, um, and here it comes back to seeing something and then trying to reach it. So what I have in mind is people ask, how can I become so successful as this person, or as strong or as clever as this person? And it's very easy. I mean, it's not easy to actually execute it, but from a theory point of view. So someone who is very strong, what is this person doing? So this person is eating very healthy, sleeping very well, and training very hard. So, and if you do the same thing as this person, then you will become this person. So there is, if you sleep well like this person, if you eat well as this person, if you train as this person, you will become as strong as this person. So now I'm asking, so you're saying why keeping all those things in a chat box while you were using the word digital twin? So the question here is, if we would like to have something that is like us, we need to build something that is like us. And if we are starting with a digital twin and coming from a manufacturing background, so digital twin is around for, I don't know, 10, 15 years. So you see the product that you see in the real world that now you see as a digital twin. And as the more pieces you add, the more closer you come to the real object. And whatever you do with a digital twin is coming closer to what you would actually do with the real thing, right? So is that something that you guys trying to do?
So the digital twin is a very common word. A lot of people
Yeah.
use it to see the counterpart, the digital counterpart of like a real world replica.
Hmm.
The way we want to say it is like it's a life like human equivalent of you, right?
Hmm.
So we are not talking about a physical replica of like in terms of just geometric dimensions. You can think of this as a human digital twin with your same body, having the same kind of agency, that having like the same kind of behavioral preferences in the world, such that it mimics you in all kind of ways. So in a lot of ways, if I tell you right now that for this entire podcast, you are not talking to me, but my digital twin, that's the future. I would have passed the Turing test if it was true that I convinced you for the entire podcast that you were talking to a real person, but it wasn't the case, right? So that's what we are talking about. Let me just give you a little bit of like an example of what it looks like today. Obviously, like we are in early phases of this whole thing. If you go to demo.myolab.ai, you get a sense of a first human embodied intelligence of what it looks like and what it looks like to have something which is not just trapped in a chat box, right? And the analogy for to before I begin is like, why is your home designed the way it is? If you have to pick one root node of all the decision, that is your physical body. The desk being so placed, chair being somewhere, the reason, the way is organized, the preferential, everything is about you. You are the anchor point of your house, right? The same way, why is AI so unanchored today? Because there is no anchoring on a single person. It's very impersonal. So it needs anchoring. And the second is all the digital actions. Why is also unanchored? That's also because there is no grounding. Everyone is doing everything by themselves, right? So here is what a human embodied intelligence will look like. I'll maybe like give you a glimpse of what a male demo personality looks like. So here is a digital replication of a person in a browser running a physics and physiologically accurate simulation of how this person is constructed. That means your hard tissues, your soft tissues, your muscle tissues, your fat layer, your outer geometry, everything. So instead of text token based of reasoning, this is how our model reasons. It knows how physically present you are in space. That's what it knows. This is not just about body at rest, it understands your body at movements. So when you actually show yourself that this is what I'm doing in an RGB stream, this is what our model right now thinks and reasons, like exactly what each one of the vertebra of your body is capable of, right? So this is the level at which we are elevating AI to right now, that it physically understands you in addition to semantic understanding of the internet, right? And on top of that, like we'll just go back. Now the entire reasoning engine, the same way you have like, other reasoning engines to reason through it, all of the reasoning is available, but any place you want to ask questions about yourself, no other model can do it right now. Our model can do it. So if you want to ask any question, hey, give me the answer for this, but for me. This is the only model that can answer those kind of questions because it is grounded in your body. As an example, here is what is a ideal chair height for me, right? There is no way any model can answer this question because they have no idea of what my embodied dimensions are, right? And this model will actually now tell you of what is a good chair height for you because it knows who you are. That's the first thing, right? And it goes on and on. Sorry. Hey, for you, the chair height is this. Ideal typically allows you to feet to rest, ground to this, place based on that. Here is your inseam dimension, height dimension, leg length, etc. And to accommodate the best amount of comfort, this is what you need to be doing, right? That is the beauty of this. The other beautiful piece is I'll maybe like share with you one of mine. So this is my embodied twin, by the way. So this is me today, all my fat and muscle distribution. You can take a look at it. And then I'll share it with you like maybe what I looked like, maybe like 2 months ago. You definitely can see I've lost some belly fat. No AI model knows about that right now. And if I'm asking about like, any kind of recommendations in terms of like health choices or like food recommendations, it literally knows exactly what's happening with you. Other examples I can show you is like here is a summary of what the model knows about me as an individual. And I've written down in text because there's no other way for me to give you an embodied intelligence. What it looks like is here is embodied understanding that like I am interested in volleyball performance training. Here's my goal and focus. Here's the kind of workouts I do. Here's the kind of health monitoring things I do. I have sleep quality tracking, things, data that I need, footwear support I need, right? This is going into embodied understanding about a person that is unheard and uncanny. Other example I can tell you is the model has learned that I have migraine issues because I've recorded my migraines. It is in the memory. Some things that will go totally undetected, unmonitored. Now it is basically tracking when migraine happens to me and what are the factors that correlate with my migraine episodes. It has figured out I'm flat-footed. So when I ask for physical activity, I ask for hiking recommendations, it will account for those things while giving me the choices.
As I'm always interested in so what's the use case? What's the applied technology that you have? Because the technology is amazing, right? And I think I'm barely capable of understanding what you guys are doing. But so what would be my first is there well, yeah, is there a use case? What would I do with that except from monitoring myself?
hmm Yeah. So you can think of this as a personal companion to you. Maybe that's the first way of thinking about it. That every time you went to an expert for an advice, this is the first person you should be going to now onwards. Everything that your mom did for you, taking care of you, this passively does things like that for you now. Why is your health the way it is? If you have a question of like, for example, it can very reasonably predict based on your physiological constraints and what your body type is, what kind of sports you would be better at. So when it comes to brainstorming, this is the place you want to go to brainstorm. The analogy I usually give is like, think of this as someone having exactly your body and exactly your lifestyle, but having the world information instead of just your brain information to deal with, right? So you literally can use this as a companion in your health, your creativity, in monitoring things, in organizing your life. This could become an anchor point of your digital life, which is much, which has much more information about you. Like I literally now go and do things like, hey, give me a bomber jacket. I don't know what kind of size and fits it works for me. I was like, what bomber jacket should I buy? And it knows my body dimension. It will literally give you like a 5 links. Like here are the things that works for you, right? Then there are kind of things that like other things I do is organize my health, like migraine episodes, doctor things, and I just like let everything share over here in a memory, and it basically organizes all of those things and gives me cross correlation. Hey, did you know that your migraines have happened most of the time when you've skipped a meal, right? Then I questions like why my energy levels down right now. I've asked these kind of questions and it will cross correlate temperature in the place you are has been higher than usual. Your sleep has been lower than usual. You did like, one workout 2 days ago, another one is this way. So this is an exaggerated amount of pressure your body has taken and it's understandable. And this gives you some sense of comfort because then you know there's nothing wrong about it. This is the way body reacts, right? So that's how it becomes like a ecosphere around your digital presence. You can literally ask any kind of questions. You can use it for creativity as well. You can record yourself doing stuff and then, export those as animations and put it in games. So there are lots of use cases around it. This is like the same way GPT, it wasn't clear how things will evolve. Chat GPT, tool calling, RAGs, everything. We just don't know how an embodied era, an embodied intelligence will evolve. but there are a lot of promising use cases, right? And that's where we are starting, but we welcome and invite everyone to give it a try. It's at demo.myolab.ai. You can create your own digital twin, and let's just be clear, who doesn't want their digital twin in life, right?
Okay. I have to say this is one of the most exciting episodes for me. I think I want to hear this. So I'm very happy that you said yes, and I am very happy that I do know that there's a lot of things on your plate, and you still decided to let's do this interview here today. And I think we found the right amount of giving away information, but also sparking curiosity. And I don't want to ruin the moment. I tend to say a lot of things to end the episode. I just wanted to say thanks for taking us along. And I will ensure I do everything I can to make people hear this episode because I enjoyed it very much talking to you. So, and I can just assume and hope that everyone will enjoy listening as much as I did.
All right, thank you for having me. I think we are on the brink of something new, human embodied intelligence. So please give it a try, demo.mylab.ai. Thanks for having me.
Take care.